Take care.
So thank you for having us. I'm Allice van Ommeren, and I'm going to be talking with both Gail and I have put this presentation together, and we're very excited to be sharing this with you. So this presentation is actually based on about 40 Paul Masson postcards that were found over the past 50 years by Gail Unzelman, and she is a longtime postcard collector of California wine history. So she's been collecting 50 years winery postcards. So we like to think she has the most expansive collection of winery postcards in the world. And then, of course, Paul Masson postcards, we identified about 40 of them. So from these and a few from my own collection, we're going to tell the story of Paul Masson. Basically his how he started very humble beginnings and how he kind of grew into a giant corporation that we know now as Paul Masson Champagne Cellars. So this first photochrome postcard that you're seeing here is the entrance to the new Paul Masson Champagne Cellars, and it was a very familiar site in the Santa Clara Valley in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. And there are quite a few postcards, chrome postcards at this one, and we're probably going to show you most of them. There are only very few early pre-prohibition postcards of Paul Masson Winery, and Gail has, we think there's 3. Gail has all 3 in the collection, and of course, we're going to definitely show you those 3 1913 postcards. So when they finished seeing Sarah 1959 actually died, they decided to put out a kind of a commemorative historical set of postcards. And there are 6 postcards in that collection. And it really talks and shows kind of early Paul Masson scenes, even though they're more up-to-date postcards. So we're going to show you all 3 of those in this kind of presentation. So this is when I said about these commemorative historical sets of postcards, this is actually one of them, and it shows a very young Paul Masson. He was actually born in 1859 on February 14th, which is on Valentine's Day. And then he came to Santa Clara in 1878 at the age of 19. He's actually from his family home in Burgundy, France. He actually came from a family vineyard, so his family had been in the wine business for several generations, but phylloxera had really devastated that. He was 19, he was looking for a new opportunity, and so he decided to come to California. He found compatriots, another Frenchman called Charles Lefranc, and he was really a pioneer wine grower here in the Santa Clara Valley, and he really kind of started working with him and learned a lot about the industry. He ended up marrying the Charles Lefranc's daughter at some point, and also went into a partnership with his son, so Charles Lefranc's son, and they started producing this really bottle fermented sparkling wine. And in 1892, really, it's kind of really stormed the California wine markets. It's the first time that this champagne really came to the sparkling wine came to people's attention. And by 1896, Paul Masson was able to buy his own vineyard land. He, above the Saratoga Hills, he also was able to plant more Burgundian varieties such as Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Blanc. And he named his hilltop estate La Cresta, and his winery is called the Mountain Winery. So those are kind of some of his beginnings. So this is the Hotel Vendôme, which opened in 1889, and it boasted 150 rooms, gardens, exotic pools, tennis courts, etc. This was kind of the luxury hotel that was built in the downtown San Jose area. And the reason why this is important is that Masson was actually using the basement of this hotel as a storage cellar for his champagne. And actually, it's a nice postcard, but also you can kind of see the basement there and kind of imagine that the cellar could be under there. And he used that both before he started building his winery and even afterwards. He found that it was a great place to store his champagne. But the 1906 earthquake, he lost about 62,000 bottles that he had cellared here in the hotel. And but Paul Masson at that time, 1906, he was doing quite well. He was able to bounce back quite quickly, and he was able to just replace it with 500,000 bottles of champagne ready to go to the market, even after such a big disaster. So he was known to be a very astute businessman. So he was very much, able to had a good business going. Now this is a postcard, another commemorative postcard, and it's kind of that brown tint to it. And this is the original winery. Actually, there was a winery before that. In 1905, he built the first winery, but it was destroyed after 1 year. It really didn't daunt him. He bounced back quite quickly again, and he began construction of this specific stone and concrete winery that you see here. And there are a couple of views of this winery, but this one kind of gives you the kind of old style view of it. In building the winery, he actually used stones from the ruins. Remember, a lot of buildings were abandoned, and so he or lost during the earthquake. So he basically took building materials of all other buildings, and one of them was the actually St. Patrick's Church in San Jose, which had was known to downtown San Jose, and it was destroyed in the earthquake. And he actually took these, you're seeing these here, these round arch stone portals from that church, and made that the front entrance of the winery, which is quite picturesque. So he was basically using other materials. And this is actually a postcard of the St. Patrick's Church after the 1906 earthquake. Gail and I looked hard to find a postcard that showed the arch, but it's already destroyed here. But needless to say, that the ruins of damage that was done was used to build his winery. So Paul Masson, continued to find success in Champagne. This was before the ban of calling it Champagne. Remember, you're not supposed to call Champagne because it's a region in France, and only Champagne from that area can be called Champagne. And this is actually a treaty. This was actually put into place in the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. That you can't really call it Champagne. But remember, 1919 we went into Prohibition, so we really never really applied it, and so it wasn't, I think, until like the 60s or 70s where they really started kind of ratcheting down again. Can't use the word Champagne. So anyway, so what you're seeing here, kind of from left to right, these bottles, and I put the little labels on there for you. So from right to left, vintages are 1911, then 1908, and then 1914. And we could not read the last one, so it's not clear what year that was. The 1908 bottle is pretty important. It's an extra dry special label, Paul Masson described it himself. The wine is remarkable for its extreme dryness and effervescence. He really liked the word effervescence, by the way, as well as aroma and delicacy of taste, and is destined to add greatly to the fame of California vintages. So he was, that's how he described his wine. So that's just, using postcards to display bottles of wine was what we're seeing. And he was very proud of his product. Speaking of proud, this is another postcard from the commemorative series. It's a beautiful, it's a reproduction of the actual grand prize diploma that the International Jury of Wine Experts awarded Paul Masson Champagne at the 1904 St. Louis Exposition. So he was starting to win a lot of awards for his champagne. And he was very proud of it, and he really wanted to use that in his marketing. So he used it to put it on the postcard. And on the back of it said, "The pride of California, the best sparkling wine produced in America." The rear caption pays tribute to several distinguished French wine experts and trade connoisseurs. In that specific St. Louis 1904, tasting or competition, there were actually 28 juries, and 6 of them were American wine experts. So again, kind of an indication of, there are some American presence there as well. So, so this is the 1913 series. Gail, like I said, has all 3 postcards. We're not sure if there's any more that exist here. This is the first one that we're seeing, and it's got the Paul Masson Grand Prix Champagne. These are actually 28 of the juries that I was just talking about, pictured here for that Grand St. Louis exposition. So anyway, so it's a unique postcard. It has a lot of details. It actually has all the names of the judges. They're listed as well as a nice image from that early on. This is the second of the 1913 series card, and it's shocking to see the champagne cellar here in San Jose. It says that there are nearly 1 million bottles undergoing natural fermentation. So Masson really followed kind of the traditional champagne making method, which is basically that you let the champagne age for at least 2 years for fermentation in the bottle. And then before you go into this, we'll talk about next, is this riddling racks. So there's a process to making the champagne and sitting in this, for 2 years for fermentation. And you can kind of get a sense too, if there's a big earthquake, these bottles, are not necessarily good. You can see where some of the damage might be. This is the riddling that I was talking about. So this is the 3rd postcard of 1913. And the riddling displayed in the last of our was also a red stamp caption. And here he talks about handling 50,000 bottles a day. So the French call this process where basically they're going to be removing the yeast that's been in the bottle. And we call it riddling, and they call it remuage. And so one by one, the bottles are all kind of sitting sideways, and a skillful riddler quickly takes each bottle from the rack and kind of turns it slightly. And that kind of shakes up the bottle inside. And the plug of yeast starts developing by turning the bottle. So you do that pretty much on a daily basis, turn it slightly, shake it a little bit. And you can see this person is wearing a mask, obviously summative. And then the yeast, when the plug is at the end, is removed. So that's kind of the final process. But it's a very dangerous profession, as bottles often exploded. We can see the riddler, he's wearing a kind of a steel mesh mask. And Paul Masson himself had marks and scars on his hands from exploding champagne bottles. So it's there's some danger with the project. But again, just a nice detailed postcard. This is back kind of to the commemorative series. Paul Masson, he was a storyteller, and he was a judge of fine wines, and he traveled back to France a lot. He was really become famous in America, and found a great opportunity to go back home and show off what he had done. Right here's a picture with him with Monsieur Carmer, who's actually, he's a Paris wine expert. He's a champion wine taster of France. And so, again, showcasing some of the people that he hangs out with. It's noteworthy that in this Prohibition era publicity, Paul Masson actually remained very active in the wine industry. So the Prohibition really kind of shut the wine industry down. He actually came up with the only government permit for medicinal champagne, and he did quite well by that. So he was able to market that. He also did quite well with shipping grapes to home winemakers in the East, because during Prohibition you could still make wine at home, a certain amount of it. So there was so he was in the business of shipping, and then shortly after the repeal of Prohibition, he he went on to continue to make champagne. In 1936, he sold his mountain winery to Mountain Ray, who also became a legend on that mountaintop. Paul Masson actually died in 1940 at the age of 81, and he is buried at Oak Hill Memorial Park, which is also known as the Pioneer Cemetery in San Jose. And in 1943, the House of Seagram purchased the property, and he was intended to use they kept the Masson mystique, the trademark, the brand, and so you heard about Paul Masson wine much after he had passed, and just kept that going for quite some time because of the branding. So this is again, one of these commemorative postcards, and we really talk about what I talked about before was really the old Masson, right? The Paul Masson, the work that he did, and then there's a kind of when Seagram took over the new Masson, the new Paul Masson, and so there's kind of a leap between the old and the new. So what you're seeing here is it's actually a 19th century French California that's overlaid with these wineries that we're seeing here, owned by Seagram now. So at the top there, you see the Old Mountain Vineyard winery, and then the new 1959 Champagne and Wine Cellars in Saratoga, and then also the San Isidro Vineyards in Gilroy. And then at the bottom, you're starting to see is the Pinnacle Vineyards, and in early 1955, the Paul Masson Vineyards really started working with UC Davis to look for more vineyard acreage, and found these areas there. And the Pinnacle Vineyards became quite expansive. We're talking about 5,000 acres in Salinas Valley near Soledad in 1962, and really the production of about 11 million gallons of wine in 1968. So it really became a huge enterprise when Seagram took it over. So with this leap of success, of course, came new facilities. And here we see another view of the new futuristic looking Paul Masson Champagne Cellars and Visitor Center, which opened in Saratoga in 1959. It's actually designed by renowned architect John Savage Boyles, who did, is well known in the Bay Area. He actually did design San Francisco Candlestick Park. And so he used the newest technology at the time and built this facility there. And when this, in Salinas Valley, when I was talking about the land that was all bought there, all that production was ready for blending, bottling, and binning at this facility. And we'll talk about that. So this is a postcard of the, kind of the entrance to the visitor center. It was a tourist destination, and people came by the busloads. Gail and I always laugh at this photo because they had to have the Greyhound bus in there, right? So, but again, it's there. Overseeing this operation here in Saratoga was actually a gentleman named Otto Meyer. He was a partner with Paul Masson in this venture, and they go back, back to the 40s or so. But under Meyer, they started the first time an export business. So we're starting to see Paul Masson wines, very clever advertising, such as, if you insist on drinking an important wine, try it there. So as Paul Masson wines, sit in Paris, Italy, you're seeing Paul Masson wine all over the world. So again, new facility, working on exporting it. We're seeing a lot of it. The great thing about this also is you're wondering probably what the E means on the flag that you see flying on that flagpole. It took us a bit, but we figured it out. It's actually, it's the US government's highest commerce honor, where the president's own, basically E is for excellence in expanding exports. So he won that award in 1965. Again, so E for excellence, some kind of a government commerce honor. And so by the end of the 60s, Paul Masson was America's largest premium wine in Europe. a lot of exporting. The other thing that you see on this postcard here is this old wooden Paul Masson press on display there that they put at the kind of at the front entrance. So another postcard, portraits is this metal structure that you see in the reflecting pool that really towers above the winery entrance, and it's called the effervescence of champagne. So it's kind of in the honor of Paul Masson, who was the founder. He really liked the term "the dancing bubbles" as a fine champagne. This really, award-winning artwork in this reflecting pool was designed by Gurdon Woods. He was a very talented sculptor and educator, and director of California School of Fine Arts. Gail and I are very curious on what happened to this metal structure. We've been asking around. We've talked to historical societies, and we were just wondering if somebody had saved it, but we haven't. And of course, we're going to open this for discussion at the end, so maybe you guys can give us some hints as far as some of these things, if they've disappeared or where they're at now. There was a 150-foot long mosaic mural that kind of covered the wall of the rotunda as you walked up the ramp, and it's and there's no postcard of it, and we don't have one, but we thought it was really important to talk about it, so we just kind of put some stuff together, and we really wanted to mention it. It really is, like I said, 153 feet mosaic. Was done by Don Jose Moja del Pino. He's a very well-known California artist and a muralist, and he was a one-time painter to the court of Spain. And he basically did this story of wine, which starts from kind of biblical times to the present. And as you walk up the ramp, you kind of see the story of wine, and in this beautiful mosaic. And the last mosaic is the one here at the bottom, where you see Paul Masson, cradling a bottle of champagne, and that's kind of the last mosaic. And we kind of cut that out and put that there so you can get a sense of it. But back to postcards. So the visitor center was very much constructed for visitors as tourist attractions, and you can see this catwalk at the top there. Views of the wine cellar, blending, finishing, and bottling rooms, packaging, and warehousing. And so that was being done at this facility. So no grapes were actually crushed there. So this was used as blending, storing, etc. So the crushing was taking place somewhere else. But the numbers, 9 million cases of wines were bottled annually, 260 million gallons of wine. And this is a great photograph if you actually see the group of visitors that are looking over these 200 redwood and oak vats in aging cellars that you can see here. And this postcard, or this photo, was actually taken by Ansel Adams, one of America's most famous photographers. And how that happened was in 1959, this new winery did a photographic exhibit on the work of Ansel Adams and his partner. And they developed this companion book called Gifted Grape, which has 30 winery photos that were, and some of them of Masson, new and old. So Ansel Adams, this is an Ansel Adams postcard, I could say that, right? So that's kind of interesting. In the whole postcard collection, there's actually 3 postcards that are credited to Ansel Adams. And again, this is another postcard. Blending and storage, obviously provided ample opportunity for tasting samples. Visitors to the Masson winery were warmly welcomed in this beautiful tasting hall to sample wines. Sometimes they had as many as 16 or 17 different wines, including sparkling, of course. And then you can kind of see it along the bar there, the long sampling bar along the left of this postcard. And then you also kind of notice the airy, relaxed tables and atmosphere that you're seeing here. Another postcard, kind kind of give you a little close-up of these tables and chairs. And these chairs were actually first released in 1952, and they were designed by Harry Bertoia. He was an Italian-born American artist, and he did this, really these mesh modern chairs. They're very airy. They kind of look like a sculpture. Space passes through them again, kind of 1959. You got to remember, you got to go with it here. So, that was quite the thing in the day. They're very highly sought after chairs. And if you're a furniture aficionado, they're quite valuable. So that's kind of fun. Behind the length of this really lengthy tasting bar, there's lighted cabinets that you can see displaying these Paul Masson winning wine. And this postcard is actually a salesman's tool. You see featured here several blue ribbon winners wines that are displayed, and again using a postcard for advertising and marketing. It also includes that rare sherry cream sherry bottle that you see here. It's a heart-shaped bottle. And it was especially made in honor of Paul Masson, because you remember his birth date is on Valentine's Day, so it's a special wine from them. So from their opening in 1959, they continued to win awards for almost 30 years. This facility was a go-to place. In the early 1980s, production was moved from kind of the urban Santa Clara Valley to more rural Salinas Valley. And then in 1987, Seagram sold the Masson brand. And then in 1990, this remarkable, beautiful building was demolished. And then housing developments and freeway took over this place. So this place, obviously, and you all know since you're from the area that this place is no longer there, but people do remember it. In the hills above Saratoga, there's still Paul Masson's original mountain winery. It's now a historical landmark, and now there are summer concerts there, as you all know. It's in its 65th season, and then this postcard remembering the old adage printed on the back of many old Paul Masson postcards: good wine makes good friends. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. I just can't believe that they tore that beautiful building down. One thing that I thought of when you were mentioning that was what did they do with that statue? They had to have held on to that. Do you know what became of it? That tower?
Oh, the metal sculpture?
Yeah.
No, we haven't been able to figure that out much at all. Gail, do you have anything to add here?
Well,
I did a lot of this presentation, but the research, is all Gail.
About the question of where all of these artworks disappeared to, I have one theory, because Seagram's is from Ontario and they have an art museum up there. Maybe they went there, or maybe they're just got crushed when they demolished the thing. I mean, the mosaic to me is the most artistic and beautiful thing. And if they didn't save that, I don't know. They probably sold the Bertoia chairs. I don't know.
Would be a shame if they didn't hold on to that. That was impressive.
Well, we know all of the winery equipment, the tanks were all sold and went to other wineries or to their facilities in Salinas. But the artworks, we don't know where they went.
Wow.
Hey, Gail, can you talk a little bit about how you started collecting winery postcards and where you found them, etc.?
In the 1960s, I started to learn about wine, and I'm a collector and I'm a historian, and I figured out that postcards were one of the best historical documents that we could have to keep our history of California wine. And so from the early 60s, I've been picking them up, and now with eBay, every now and again, we can find a few that I don't have. I think there's like 2,200 in the collection. I've done one postcard book by Arcadia on Sonoma County, and there probably could be a couple of more done, but this was great fun doing Paul Masson, actually. I've never been too interested in the big corporate organizations. I really like the old history better than corporate, but this was good fun. So thanks. I'm glad you liked it, really. A lot.
Very, very interesting.
There's some questions here, so Gail, I'm gonna make you answer them. Do you know what medicinal champagne was used for?
Belly aches. No.
Was that-
I mean, didn't they do that a lot during Prohibition? You could get medicinal wine or you could get medicinal brandy, and it was just a term to keep making your champagne and selling it. And the amazing thing is Paul Masson had the only permit from the government to do that. So I think he was well known.
Yeah.
If I'd been alive in the 1920s, I would have had a lot of belly aches.
Yeah, me too. Yes, absolutely.
And did you find anything out about those chairs? Are they still around, Gil?
I don't know. I have not. I've been in touch with Saratoga people at the museum, and they don't know. It's just like they all got crushed. But they had to have saved them. They have to have. You couldn't just pile that in a heap. We'll find them. We'll find them.
So those 3 1913 postcards, we think that's all of them, right?
There was a notice in Pacific Wine and Spirit Review in May of 1913, I think. Paul Masson was announcing that he was going to have this set of postcards done as an advertising tool. Pacific Wine and Spirit Review described 2 of the cards, but didn't describe any more. And so I know I have 3, that there were at least 3, but and talking to other wine historians and postcard people, nobody's seen any others than the 3 that we showed tonight. So let's say that that's all there were. Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask you, when Alice was talking, she mentioned that Ansel Adams took the photographs at the winery there, and that there were 3 Ansel Adams attributed cards. Do you have all 3 of those?
Yes, they're really not rare. You just have to look on the back in tiny letters. It says photo by Ansel Adams.
Okay.
I think there's 6 of them.
Oh, 6. Okay.
There are? I think there's 3 photographs of the winery.
Oh, 3 of the winery. Okay.
Right. I know there's one that they never made into a postcard. It's of a vineyard man up on the mountain plowing the vineyard. It's a classic. I think the original photograph, one of them, didn't I tell you that, I mean, it sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they never made a postcard, and that's really too bad.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead, Don.
I have that set of about 4 of those that you showed. And I noticed on a couple of them that they do say Ansel Adams on the back. And you just brought this little collection I've had for a long time in my collection. You brought it to life. And I'm very unhappy that beautiful rotunda and staircase were demolished, because I've always admired those cards of that particular building. And I'm really distraught. I think they might have given these out free to the people that visited. I don't know how I could have got them into my collection way back when, but you brought them to life. And I appreciate that. Huh.
Good.
Welcome.
And it's true. Where did that staircase by the rotunda, where did it go?
That's another one of the mysteries. We don't,
I'm not where the staircase went, but where did that staircase lead to?
oh, the rotunda?
Up to the balcony, maybe?
It led to the entry of the winery to that platform. What did
Oh,
we?
where you saw the barrels.
Right, right.
Yes, okay. Uh-huh.
And at the end of the tour, you would end up back down at the tasting room.
Yeah. And then I thought about the laborers that had to turn all those bottles every day.
Yeah,
I wonder what they received as payment for salary for doing that all day. Can you imagine?
that would be a good one.
There was also that big prize they got at the what was it, the Chicago Fair? And I wondered why they had a naked man and the lady was clothed.
You're very observant.
I thought that was rather funny. Okay, anyway, thank you so much. That was really most interesting.
Thank
ahead.
you.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Gail
ahead.
and Alice, do you know any more about when and why it was demolished? I didn't catch that. The
They, I think they were, well, part of it, they were building a freeway over it, right?
oh, okay.
But, I don't know, Gail, anything else on, I mean,
I think mainly they needed to expand. They needed many more vineyards to keep up with their huge quantity of wine that they were making. And they couldn't expand in Santa Clara Valley. It was becoming too urban. And that's when they decided to move basically their whole crushing and winemaking facility down to Salinas Valley. And so then they had no use for this great big monster building that they had used for 30 years. And they just crushed it. But that's why, and they had sold to another conglomerate at this time. And so we didn't follow what happened in Salinas and how the company went, because it became a different company and somebody bought Paul Masson brandy label, somebody else bought Paul Masson this, and then it just kind of petered out after a while. Today, the last I read, Gallo owns Paul Masson brandy, but they choose, or is it the sherry? I don't know. But they choose not to make it, but they own the label, so nobody else can make it.
Wow.
I have a question about Paul Masson. When he came over to the Santa Clara Valley, he brought his family's traditional winemaking skills. Was he known for any innovations in the industry? Did he think up any new ways to do things?
I don't think he was a new way kind of guy.
No.
He was very traditional. It wasn't until after his death and all those years later when they built the big Saratoga facility that they had state of the art of everything. Otherwise, he was happy to have his champagne in the bottom of the Hotel Vendôme.
And what happened to the hotel? Did that burn down in the earthquake?
No, I don't think
Or
so.
collapse?
It was damaged in the earthquake and he lost all of that champagne, but didn't
About-
they eventually tear it down to build something else in town?
Yes, they did. They did.
That's what happened.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question. Did he actually own that hotel, or was he just renting more or less the space underneath it? Do you know?
He did not own it, I know that, and I assume he just was leasing that space.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious. There was I was just looking at some postcards not long ago that featured the that hotel, and I was curious about the history of it. I had no idea that Paul Masson was involved in it, but that was very interesting to me. Thank you for that.
I also wanted to ask whether during the Prohibition, whether they made sacramental wine. You know anything about that? Or just medicine?
No, I think that he was happy with medicinal wine and he didn't have to go the church wine.
Probably make more money, that's for
Well,
sure.
absolutely. Medicinal wine made with champagne is much more expensive than sacramental wine, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Can you still buy that wine, medicinal wine?
And I don't think so. Actually, you know, I have in the wine cellar, I had forgotten about it, an old bottle of the heart-shaped sherry
Oh, wow.
that Alice showed us.
Gosh, that's gotta be something to keep.
I mean, that's gotta be a long time ago. How long ago was 1980?
Long time.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions? Please, if you have any, please speak up.
Well, if anybody ever finds out what happens to all of those art structures and artworks and pass the word.
Yeah,
So none of you have been to that center, that Saratoga Center? Since you're all from, well, not all of you are from Center.
Well, we've been to that old one where the concerts are, but not
Yeah.
the other one you showed.
yeah.
But nobody had gone to the big Paul Masson facility. Nobody's old enough.
Well, I'm old enough, but I didn't go.
Well, I lived in Sonoma County, so I didn't go either. And now I'm very sad that I didn't go.
I'm thinking about all the cars from the Asti winery up in Sonoma Valley. Asti, they had a lot of propaganda on postcards.
I think Asti is the #1 producer of postcards
Yeah, maybe.
of all of the wineries. They really used them a lot and they gave them away free in their tasting room. And
Yeah.
if you dropped it in their barrel, they'll mail it for you.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That I was curious because I used to, when I was working, I used to spend a lot of time down in the Salinas area, calling on not wineries, but food processors down there at that time. And I don't remember seeing and this is back in the 1960s. Or early 70s. So I guess Paul Masson was down there, but I don't ever remember seeing that building. So when you were talking about it and showing that it was in Salinas, I was amazed that I had never run across it.
You know, I've
Shame on-
seen other references where they've used the word Gonzales, that it
Oh,
was actually in Gonzales,
okay, a little
but they
further
used the
south.
term, right. And it's supposed to be pretty close to where I-5 or 101 runs by. It was, but
Yeah.
I don't know it.
Yeah, I'm just sorry I never saw that. That's disappointing. I should have looked into it more often or better. That's for sure.
Well
Anyway,
done, Alice. Well done.
absolutely. Great job, Alice. Appreciate it very much. And thanks for all the research that you did also, both of you, on the subject. It was fascinating and interesting.
Thanks.
What about, yeah, I was curious too, was there any tie with Paul Masson with the vineyards up in, up in Sonoma, up in that area, or as far as producing the grapes, was that something that he purchased from, or
Are you
were they
talking you're talking the original founder,
the
Paul
origin?
Masson,
Yeah, well,
or the new Paul Masson?
just kind of the new, I guess I would.
Yeah, because the old Paul Masson, he just had what, 25, 30 acres up there on
Oh.
his on his mountain and increased it a bit, but he never made that much wine.
Yeah.
And when Seagram's came in, they just wanted to use his name, but I don't think they had vineyards in Sonoma or Napa in this area at all. They were looking for, like Alice said, 5,000 acres of vineyard, and they had to go south to find those.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Thanks so much, ladies. I appreciate that very much.
Fun, very fun.
That was a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for coming.